So during my second year, I sidetracked in the research, and I started looking for security ceremonies as an extension for security protocols. And at that time, I didn't feel comfortable enough to pursue anything on this because, as I'll explain a bit later, it's a very broad area and it's not settled yet what exactly a ceremony is. So I'm trying to formalize something that is not exact, so it's a bit conflicting. But still working on this on my grant back in Brazil, and together with some people in Royal Holloway. Jaron Price, that was here in the computer lab some time ago, and Marcelo, that's his student, and he used to work with me back in Brazil. So the title then. So what I'm talking here is a proposed framework for trying to build an analysis tool for security ceremonies. I'll be talking today about what's the motivation behind that and explaining a bit what is this concept of ceremony. And also I'll talk about some research that Marcelo and Jaron did on creating a taxonomy for classifying problems in security ceremonies. I will talk a bit about some formalization efforts that I've been trying looking to address some points on this big area that is security ceremonies. Then some final remarks. There's not very much yet, but I hope it will get there one day. So I'll start first talking about the concept of security protocols as we usually see. Security protocols then are communication. It's in a medium that communicates information or knowledge, as we usually tend to formalize, between one computer and another computer. So when we want to verify such protocols or claims that we have in these protocols, we tend to create some assumptions. Then we say, okay, if keys are never leaked, or if everything is secure, then the protocol is secure. So we create these assumptions so that we are able to verify such protocols. But if we look back in history, we'll see that most of the protocols that were claimed correct by any tool, so some flaws were found later on, so that these protocols could be misused or corrupted, and still they were formalized, they were verified, and we have reasonable answers of what properties are in these protocols. And what ceremonies come to address is the part of assumptions, because usually when we have to assume something to create a proof for a property in a protocol, we tend to overstate what is really needed, or we tend to blur the details into a big thing that is manageable in our formalization. So if we think about ceremony then is a way bigger thing than a protocol. It will include like very complex component that is a human being. So we are not working anymore on a computer-to-computer base medium that we have communication just between machines that we can predict, that we program to work, but we have human beings. And also we will see that most of the failures of the protocols are not exactly related with the protocol failing, but the protocol is failing the expectation of the human beings behind the screens. So what happens is that if you look, for example, for SSL, SSL in itself is secure for the properties that we can prove under the assumptions we usually have of identity and the security of keys and so on. But people end up being fooled to establish an SSL connection, for example, with the wrong site, or create problems, especially because SSL was designed to be a machine-to-machine protocol, and most of the problems happen on this layer that includes the human being. So the human being expectations is not addressed by the protocol. And what we are seeing now is that in security terms, a lot of security is being biased towards a human-centric perspective. And this is important then to to bring this idea of evolving the protocols towards human interaction. But we will also see that when we talk a computer is not just an agent, a single thing. A computer can be broken down into different aspects. And we'll see that this is important because we know that different types of attacks can happen in computers. And just saying, look, this computer is compromised, not necessarily means that just bad things will happen to compromised computers. Sometimes we have a computer that is not compromised, but it has an UI flaw. And the UI is not designed in an intuitive way, and this makes the user prone to errors and makes the protocol to fail. For example, SSL is the classic case. So UI is poor in terms of giving assurance of the identity of the other peer when you're establishing SSL. So if you don't take care on good UI composition to display the user the requirements that we took into account when verifying the protocol. So we say identities are verified. Then if the user cannot check this assumption by himself, he probably will miss it and will establish a protocol with the proper assumption. And the same thing happens to other parts of the machinery that we have in protocols. So we have operating systems and applications and UI. That's the basic division we came so far. And another factor that makes protocol secure or insecure are environmental factors. So, for example, we can have some ceremonies that oblige a person to do something by, for example, a passport control. One of those electronic passport controls, it's a two-door operating environment where you are alone in there. You have this assurance that no two people are inside one of these biometric passport controls. And then, but these environmental factors, they can affect also how the protocol works. For example, some of the assumptions are wide on these things. So they assume, for example, that traffic is encrypted. And then if you drop this assumption, it's not an assumption on the humans, but still it plays a big part on what a protocol is and what the ceremony behind this protocol. This is what we call protocol, and this is a ceremony. So that's what we are trying to address, what we are trying to look over. So our basic idea here is that we need to understand why protocols fail when put in practice. And then putting in practice a protocol means putting it in context. Not saying just a peer sends a message, an encrypted message to another peer, but this message means something to someone, and this message must be under these environmental constraints to be secure. So my computer doesn't need to be corrupted for me to lose control of my password. Someone could be shoulder surfing when I'm typing, and this is a vulnerability that maybe we can make a protocol tolerate or not. So the general motivation here is that protocol design and analysis is a well-developed research area. While ceremonies with this expansion, there are very few ceremonies written down. We know that they exist, but they are not written down, and this makes the assumptions on protocols somewhat being decided not by the designer, but by the person that is verifying or the person that is implementing. So bringing this wider view will help us to put in practice what is expected from the designer points of view. So we see that when protocols are implemented, some of them fail to provide the expected security properties, especially because the assumptions are not clear. The assumptions are not fine-grained enough. So what we're trying to do here with ceremonies is just to spice it up, just to break down assumptions. Instead of saying a key is secure, we want to see in what setup it is secure. So if it breaks, if a protocol breaks because a key is insecure, that was that much. But still, it could be more meaningful if we knew, for example, the key was lost in this way than in the other. So we are trying to narrow the points of problem in protocols. So that's the idea of ceremonies, the motivation. So our question is why? That protocol design analysis is well developed, ceremonies are not. And why, when protocols are implemented, some of them fail, and we want to know why. And why the necessary assumptions are not always clearly stated. So these are our general motivation. So some more motivation is that ceremonies are difficult to describe. In general, we never know, different from protocols that we just put machinery and then we know if we input something, it will, they are deterministic, so we need the right input to get the right output. When we go to ceremonies, we have humans, and then we lose determinism and we make them very difficult to describe. So when we have to check what is being done, we need to be very careful in here. Also, fine-grained assumptions are necessary to understand better where the protocols break, because we see in verification that some property is not the shape we want, but we see that based on the assumptions. Maybe with ceremonies it will create us a better setup to understand where exactly do protocols break. Another thing is that the problem seems very hard to describe, and for consequence very hard to formalize. So that was the sort of challenge I was looking for when I finished my PhD, and it's a lot of work, and it seems that something can be done, and that's what I'm trying. So, and another thing is that when people finally decide to go for ceremonies to describe the assumptions that protocols should have, there are no tools to help ceremony designers to test them methodically. So what I'm trying here is to build a framework where people could say, okay, if I take into account that the human being is expecting that, or that he knows something, then how can I create a protocol that will help the human being not to fail? So that's the idea. On this ceremony description and classification, different from protocols, that we have protocols for different things, and we have basic failures in protocols. For example, we have loads of problems that are well understood and well established. For ceremonies, till a couple of years ago, there was a lot of research and it was scattered. So Marcelo and Jaron came with a taxonomy to try to explain why the protocols break and where the ceremonies could come to help these to be established. And this is where we based our research for the formalization. So they identified that we have normally 5 types of problems, and they are classified as user knowledge, authentication capabilities, decision-making influencing factors, so like speed and things like that, bounded attention, and inherent characteristics of the protocol itself. What we are doing now, we are working just with this one part of the first component of the taxonomy, that is user knowledge distribution. So basically, as we'll see later, what I'm trying to do is to modify Larry's inductive method for protocol verification into a method where we can map knowledge distribution for human beings. How the knowledge flows from a human being to a computer, from a computer to another computer, and then from that computer to another human being, or between human beings. And we are trying to make it as flexible as possible. So, just for you to understand a bit better what are the components of the taxonomy, for example, the problems on user knowledge normally come from lack of knowledge of computing, lack of knowledge of security, lack of knowledge of security threats, or inaccurate mental models. And that's basically what we are trying to pursue, right? We're trying to check if the protocols and the ceremonies behind involving the human beings, they have accurate mental models, that what people expect is what is happening in ceremonies, and that there is enough evidence for people and impossible things for a human being to do are put into some of these protocols. Some other of the components of the taxonomy are authentication capabilities. For example, are how good people are to authenticate each other, and we see that users are not good to authenticate things they don't know. So we have, with this in mind, we devised a function for recalling things that they already know or things that they learned during the ceremony execution. And we see that also that users are not good at authenticating objects or digital objects. And we see that, for example, most of the protocols try to secure the communication, computationally secure means, and with that comes keys and things that are really not meaningful for people. So we don't care that there is, I don't know, or we don't care which are the 256 bits that are in our key. We just want something memorable that we can understand and that we can remember or recall. So this is also taken into account because we have this, we're building a function for recognition of things. Then another part of the taxonomy is the decision making. So we have these things will be very complicated to formalize. I even don't know if they are possible. So these are part of my doubts that I wanted to ask you for some ideas. For example, decision making is a problem in protocol because you have to either accept this identity or not. And then you have like social conditioning, user principles. You have a time. For example, if you give enough time, people can get a better decision. If you don't, then people tend to take not as good decisions. And then you share risk, and you have the power of scaring people with things. And then bounded attention, it's more on the UI point of view in the ceremony. So we have the lack of attention to security and the lack of attention to the absence of security. So we don't know if it is secure and we don't know if it is insecure. So for example, some of the ceremonies we've been analyzing ask people to input things that they see in part of their screen. And with that, we try to check that the person is taking care of the right clues in the UI. And usually, security is a secondary workflow, and that's one of the main problems. For example, whenever you go to your home to do some home banking in the internet, you're always concerned with sending money and paying a bill or something. You're never concerned that a protocol was established in a secure way beneath it. Maybe you are concerned, but that's not your main goal. And we have the problem of conditioning that I'm not sure that it's possible to formalize. Then we have inherent human limitations. There is some research here, especially from Paul Curzon. He's been doing some research on this, about memory limitations and lapses and slips. What Paul does is use model checkers to check cognitive overload, and then he can map possible slips on ceremonies. Then we have problem-solving limitations, task termination, and non-deterministic behavior. So with that, these are the usual problems that we have in ceremonies. What we are trying to do here is to formalize at least one bit of it and start from somewhere, because it's such a big problem that we just need a starting point. And we know that it will be very hard to get over everything. And part of it may be infeasible even to formalize. So we decided to start tackling the problem of user knowledge from the Carlos Price taxonomy that we just seen. To do that, we chosen a strong and well-established verification tool and technique, because we know that if historically something was good for protocols, it tends to be good for ceremonies. We just need to see if this tool is able to cope with the expansion that we have. I did some tests with model checkers and with set solvers, and I've seen that some of the tools have problems to cope with the exponential explosion of components and things that happen at the same time. So this is why we've chosen to do it in Isabelle. So our main goal is, at the moment, is to break down assumptions regarding user knowledge. So that's what we are looking for. So we are looking to answer these questions. Where do protocols and ceremonies break due to a set of user knowledge constraints? So if the user knows something, things happen. If the user doesn't know, things doesn't happen. And can I distribute knowledge securely from one human to another human, passing through a set of machinery? And then this is basically the question that I put on. So as I said before, we've chosen to use the inductive method in Isabelle Hall, mainly because I already knew it beforehand and I was comfortable with. And also because this method shows very few constraints when dealing with potentially infinite sets of knowledge. And it was widely verified, this claim, and especially during my PhD when I worked with multicast verification, I saw that basically if you implement it correctly, if you specify things correctly, it's very difficult to find any constraint in terms of how Isabelle deal with sets, and so it was important. So, and also the method was used to verify a wide range of protocols in the past, and what we want is to build a ceremony for some of these protocols and keep the proof as it is today, but expand it with the ceremonies on the sides. And also we've seen that the method is easily extensible, especially because it was built over a generic theorem prover. So most of the specialized tools for security protocol verification, they have problems, and also they are very difficult to extend. So yeah, and on the other hand, critics may say that using Isabelle is too difficult. And that's basically what I heard from everybody that I've been talking to about doing this in Isabelle. But fortunately, we don't find it anymore. So it's, I think the benefits of using such a powerful tool are enough for us to bypass this difficulty on learning the tool itself. So what is our approach then on formalizing? Our first idea was to keep the actual method fully working, and we wanted to change as little as possible on proofs that are already built. We just want to expand the theories in such a way that I can just swap my theory that I use for protocol verification today for this new theory, and the protocol verification will remain mostly the same. Maybe the general tactics to prove the lemmas and goals in Isabelle will remain the same. Maybe some small technicalities can happen, but then we are trying to map this. We also defined two different mediums for communication and knowledge flow. So instead of having just the traditional computer-to-computer media, that is what all the events in Isabelle say about protocol description, we created a new media for human-to-human interaction. So instead of saying like of having an event just to send a message or to receive a message or to take notes of protocol as it used to be in the method, we created a new medium where people see, people tell, people read, and we also have like displays and inputs to make a cross medium event, so that we can take data from the computer-to-computer media to the human-to-human media and backwards and forwards, so that we can get something that a human being is knowledge that a human being has, and then put it through the computer and extract it on the other side and check that it was not corrupted, it was not changed over the process. And also, so that's basically what we have. We have a set of functions to let us cross from one media to another. Basically, some of the technicalities here. We create a new data type for human. That is just to have a new type. Basically, not to mix humans and computers, so that we can map that. And we also spice it up a bit, the message. So we add in here a human, so that we can mention this. A computer can mention this message is to that human, and we can address humans by their names. And also we have another another part here, that is the human memorable secret, where it's something that the user can recognize that is different than a key, for example, that he may possess but he may not easily recognize. Then we change, as I said before, the data type event. So instead of just having the classical event of sending a message from one agent to another, from receiving a message and to sending things or noting things off protocol, we have now this other 4 events. So we have this cross-medium ones where an agent, a computer displays a human a message, a human inputs a message into a computer, and a human tells another human a message, and a human hears a message. It's a way of emulating the notes. So you just caught it in the air, something that was not meant to be there. Then we change it a bit, the implementation of how knowledge is distributed to the spy, to the attacker. So what we did here, so says is the same thing. So if someone sends a message, the person knows if someone sends a message, the spy knows because he monitors the network. So that's basically the first thing. Gets, if someone receives a message, the spy already knows it because he learned by the says event. Notes, if someone is getting something off protocol that this person is collaborating with the spy, then the spy knows that thing. Otherwise, the spy doesn't know. Then with displays, we have here and inputs, we have the case of the rogue computer. So if the computer is corrupted by the spy, then the spy learns. If the computer is not corrupted, then the computer will not share the information with the spy. It will not collect that information. And then we still not sure about how this tells and hears here will work then on the human medium, because we are modeling 2 different, at this point we are having 2 different attackers that collaborate. One computer, like something like an agent that runs on the computer, and the human that is behind. So they share knowledge, but we didn't create this. Then we have the change in agent knowledge. That's basically, it's reasonably simple, because if this A here, that is the person who is sending a message, is actually A, then he knows that information, otherwise he doesn't. And the same thing here happens to displays and inputs. And here, because we didn't put there with spies, in here, yeah, it also doesn't expand because C and D is out of the implementation of the function knows. We also are creating some other functions to deal with the human knowledge that is distributed. So once we have the events on the ceremonies, they're part of our inductive definition, we can try to transform this inductive set using some of these functions. So we created 3 basic functions that we have, and some of them are similar to what we have in protocols, some others are just new, some ideas that we had. So we have one human function that is equivalent to analyze. Analyze is you learn everything on a message that you receive and you respect cryptography. Then read is equivalent to analyze. So I'll just be able to read things that are understandable by me. And then we created a function very similar to analyze, but instead of dealing with crypto, we just ignore, like a human being doesn't learn hashes, he doesn't learn keys, he doesn't learn any computer form that appears in the message. He just learns things that are meant for him. We have write is a way to test the knowledge acquired by the spy that is on this human-to-human level. So what we do here is equivalent to synth in the protocol version. Basically, what we rearrange whatever the human can know in new potential message that the spy could put on the trace. And we created this new function that is called recognizes. And it's a function that matches previously learned messages. So I can recall things. And it's something that it was not clear before. We also designed another relation that relates a computer and a human. Because it doesn't make sense, for example, for me to input something in a computer. Because the way how things work in these inductive definitions, it doesn't make sense for me to input things in computers that I cannot be physically close, for example, or that I'm not related in any way. So I cannot go and, I don't know, right now type my password in Mike's computer. Even though if I don't constrain that in my formalization, it will be a possible thing. And also this human-computer relation can create cases where the spy cannot get some of the devices. For example, we are formalizing now those calculators from HSBC, those one-time password calculators that you get from HSBC. We are formalizing that ceremony. So basically, that device has a very strong relation between human and that computer, that small device, and makes that the spy would not be able to get it. Right? So that's one of our implementations. We also noted that this design of a human-computer relation will have a very big impact on the function knows. So we may have to redesign, we may have to go back to knows and say, okay, it doesn't make sense to actually display some display be possible and the knowledge being passed to that person if the person is related to the computer. If something is showing up in someone's computer, it doesn't mean that I learn. So that's what we are working on right now. We are also experimenting with some functions to convert human knowledge in computer data and computer data into human knowledge. We want to map especially this idea of digital signatures and things like that with these functions. So what else we implemented already? We've proven a series of tactical lemmas that will be needed in future verification for ceremonies. For example, injectiveness of these sets and very basic thing that Isabel needs to reason. Some of them were just basic copy and paste and modifying what was there before, while creating these tactical lemmas for recognizes, for example, took us some time to really understand and see how the problem was being built. We are also working on the relation between knowledge sets for cross-medium functions. What we have here is that some things that you learn on the computer medium and things that you learn off computer, they are not exactly compatible. So we are trying to find ways to relate what you learn outside the computer medium and either on the computer medium or the human medium. And as I said before, we were working on a small example of authentication ceremony that uses one-time password devices as a proof of concept. To finish here, we have still lots of doubts on what we are doing. So the first thing that we encounter is that it is not clear for us that the threat model for protocols and ceremonies is uniform. It means that this idea of such a powerful attacker like the Dolevial that is implemented in the method that can oversee whatever sees on the network, for example. He can capture whatever he sees on the network. We are ensured that this applies for the human-to-human medium. So we have ways of guaranteeing that that will not happen even though we will not speak encrypted. So that this sort of threat modeling is still something that bothers us, but we have no answer. Also, as we are getting protocols and creating the ceremonies for them, because there are so few ceremonies described, we don't know where to stop, because you can always break down an assumption to something smaller and smaller and smaller. And we came from this key provisioning that, for example, keys are secure to I don't know, something a user knows, and like the password that encrypts the key, and that's something that just the user knows. But still, we can go much further than that. In some areas, we can describe ceremonies in much finer grain. So then this is a problem. Then another doubt we have is that how to describe some of the issues from psychology and social sciences and try to formalize that. And this seems very unlikely and very odd, but it will be really important to achieve some of what we want. And then we are working with some people in Royal Holloway, also psychologists, to help us to understand and see if it's possible to model. Because Paul Curzon in Queen Mary, he did some formalization of cognition. And so it seems to be possible to do something. We don't know how deep we can go on that. And as I said at the beginning, it's an ongoing work. And our main achievement so far was the comparison, how protocols and ceremony breaks for that specific scenario of the one-time password device. Our goal is to use the method to help designing new ceremonies. It's to help designers to methodically test how things are being built. And we have a working formalization for small problems. But still, we are very far away from what we want and what is maybe where it start to become interesting. So, questions?